There's an old joke about two economics grad students walking through a forest when they came across a pile of cow dung. The first grad student says to the other, "I'll pay you $100 to eat that pile of shit." The second grad student thinks for a while before remembering that he decided to be an academic as a career and he was in no position to turn down $100. So he gets out his knife and fork and digs in. A little while later, the pair come across a second pile of cow dung, and the second student decides he wants his friend to deal with the same awful taste he had to. So he says, "I'll pay you $100 to eat that pile of shit." The first student, already regretting paying $100 for the dare earlier, decides he needs his money back. So he whips out his emergency spoon and digs in. Walking a little more, the first student looks at the second and says, "You know, I gave you $100 each, and then you gave me back the same $100 each. I can't help but feel like we both ate shit for nothing." "Have you learned nothing at university?" responded the second student. "We increased service sector GDP by $200 and created 2 new jobs." Politicians and businesses love talking about the jobs they create because they know people respond positively to more employment in the economy.
Today our cities are flooded with illegal...
That's because people need jobs to live, which is kind of messed up. It was not like this for most of history. Well, it was a little bit like this for the proletariat. Maybe you can argue for the slaves. But most people could just make a living themselves. They were self-employed. And now everyone just needs jobs where you're kind of paid peanuts of what you make them. And if you cannot have this great opportunity, then you starve.
illegal
And
alien...
of course, if this job goes away somehow, then you're screwed. If it gets automated, then are you gonna get all the money that you made before? No. So at this point, we full on live in a society where people fear progress for a good reason.
are being squeezed out of the labor force and their jobs are taken.
Get rid of second jobs, with some exceptions. Some people have jobs where they need to top up their skills.
I think there'll be new jobs.
We have created more than 13 million new jobs.
If there are more jobs for more people, then that means more income for households, more opportunities for individuals, more customers for businesses, and more tax revenue for the government. It also means more people...
Yeah, but like, jobs are not the point, but actually solving the problem of the people. That should be the goal. Not just keeping people busy.
being productive members of society, making the goods and services that everybody else gets to enjoy. But if you follow this simple train of thought, it's easy to lose track of the bigger picture. Work is not the end goal of a good economy. It's the resulting goods and services that come from the work that are. Creating jobs for the sake of creating jobs is really no different to the poor old econ students chowing down on cow hats. It's funny when it's an ironic joke, but this...
Yeah, people might not like to hear this, but it's all about sharing. When a robot comes to take away the job, there is no reason why the people should be worse off. In fact, they have more free time. Even if they, let's say that they go home and do nothing, because there could be like two outcomes, essentially. That either the person possibly shares the responsibilities that need to be done. Let's say that maybe their job goes from like 40 hours a week to like, 10 hours a week, and they share some other job. Or just go home, relax, learn something, possibly train themselves up. And what could be a really important one too is that they actually start a family. Pay attention to that. I mean, not even that long in the past, women used to stay home and take care of the kids, and most of all, look after the family. And now we live in a society where both people supposed to work, so even more than two jobs. So yeah.
But this simple ideology is probably costing you more than you realize. This next part will probably make you angry, and individually that's the right way to feel. But that anger at what I'm about to say is why this excuse has become so popular. Take a look at this chart of new jobs created in school systems across America since the year 2000. The number of new teachers has stayed more or less in line with the number of new students, which makes total sense. But now take a look at the number of new jobs created for principals and assistant principals. It's grown at more than 3 times the rate of new students, mostly because principals are getting assistants and the principals of large schools are getting multiple assistants to help run their office. Alright, the need for those jobs is a bit questionable, but at least principals and their assistants are still working in the schools themselves. The fastest growing group of all, though, has been the administrative staff. These jobs have grown 11 times faster than regular old teaching jobs, and 11 times faster than the number of students. Teachers are...
Also, this can be hard to track, although whether they are useful. Obviously, they are just interested in having their job and keeping it. So, these kind of roles tend to have the highest amount of bullshit jobs. They're completely worthless. Well, some might be useful, but it is bloated. And when you look at leader companies, just startups, right? They have no one, right? They don't have anyone who's like, they don't have like, 50 managers, right? Who needs that?
Are highly...
That just gets in the way.
qualified and underpaid for what they do, whereas administration positions are normally more highly compensated, have lower prerequisites, and are more comfortable than being in a classroom. While there are...
Yeah, that kind of messed up, right? And a lot of people are also really gunning for these professional managerial jobs, where they just do nothing. Well, they might believe that they do things, but do they? And they get paid well for it. And also their chance of getting let go possibly is pretty low, because like you can't really tell how useful these people are.
While there are endless reports about teacher shortages, underfunding, and poor academic performance, the whole system has effectively turned into a jobs program that occasionally educates some students. For people on one side of the aisle, this is a great way to point out government inefficiency and advocate for.
Yeah, that's kind of true. Like, no school wants to just flop. They always like, oh, if there's a chance of like the school isn't being in danger, or yeah, they just let the students pass through. They don't care. They don't care about students that much. I'm not gonna make the claim that they possibly don't care about the students at all. But if it reflects badly on them, then they are likely gonna pick their ass.
Advocate for a privatized school system, and the people on the other side of the aisle don't want to be responsible for cutting out that many jobs, so the status quo remains. Now, education is far from the only job.
I'm not a fan of privatized school systems. Because just country-wise, your interest is to educate your populace, well, unless you deliberately want them to be ignorant, but I'm just going to be assuming that you want to foster human capital. Your interest is to make as many people as awesome as possible. That's it. And make as many people as well off as possible, and possibly ambitious as possible. And that's going to lead to the best results. But of course, this is not what you would want to see. This is not your incentive if you're well off. You would want the public education to suck and private education to be awesome. This gives your kid an advantage. So this is why you might see, especially elite colleges or even top colleges, have a representation of like elite idiots who are like not like special, but possibly got some good opportunities in life, and like aspirant middle class. But most people are screwed. That's kind of my point. The country's utilizing their human labor, human capital pretty poorly.
Only jobs program disguised as a public service. Homeless services have become a major expense for cities across the world, and when reporters looked into specific programs in Los Angeles, they found a complicated web of overlapping government agencies, non-profit operators, and opportunistic contractors. The city was spending hundreds of millions of dollars on housing people when it turned out very few people ended up getting a house. But these...
Yeah, this is an important point, that capitalism does not exist to solve problems. Capitalism exists to profit off problems, make profit, right? And this often includes that you want to create problems and never solve them.
But
suppose you can solve this easily and cheaply, and then all these people would go out of a job. They are heavily incentivized to never solve this problem. They only want more homeless people. If you pay someone to fix the roads, you might think that, oh yeah, they are incentivized to fix the roads. They're not really, well, no, they're incentivized to have bad roads because they're kind of paid to fix it. So they're going to do a terrible job.
But these programs were almost impossible to walk back or streamline because it creates jobs. Now, for some unknown reason, you've probably been hearing a lot about tariffs over the last 3 weeks. Now, there has been a lot of misinformation about what these actually are and who actually pays for them on both sides of the political aisle. When a country like China ships something to a country like the USA, it might be subject to a tariff, which the Chinese company will need to pay to get its products through customs. If there is no local supplier of the same product in America, then the Chinese company can just raise the price of that product and pass it along to consumers, which would mean that you do end up paying for it, but not directly. If there is a local supplier of the product that can't compete with cheap goods coming from China, then that business might be at risk of shutting down and taking local American jobs with it. A tariff can level competition by making the imported goods more expensive. Now, if the Chinese company wants to compete, it might not be able to pass along the entire cost of the tariff to the consumer, and instead, it will have to accept that some of the cost will come out of its profit margins, in which case it actually is the Chinese company that ends up paying at least part of the tax. But even in these rare circumstances, prices would still be higher for consumers than if the cheap Chinese imports were allowed to enter the market with no markup at all. This means that many economists oversimplify it by calling it a tax on consumers, which isn't wrong, it just makes it more confusing for people to actually understand how these systems work. Now, despite their details or very well documented inefficiencies and complications, they still remain politically popular because they protect jobs. The political pressure to put anybody in any job becomes particularly apparent before an election, but the private sector is just as guilty of perpetuating the "it creates jobs" excuse as the government is. Private companies have a profit motive, which would make you think that they would cut down on unnecessary expenses wherever possible, and for many businesses, their largest expense center is their employees. But under
Especially a government job can be inefficient. So, in a way, by creating a job, you actually give enough money for the person to live, presumably, while keeping them busy and possibly ingrained to the system.
But under certain circumstances, hiring more employees than is really necessary can help these profit-driven companies as well. In his book, Bullshit Jobs, the anthropologist David Graeber outlines how the corporate world has become inundated with middle management white-collar jobs that effectively achieve nothing, but they either make company management feel good about having lots of employees, or they fix up some issue created by another bullshit job.
Yeah, good point. So you have a manager, and they're like, are they gonna be very interested in in solving problems. Well, maybe to a minimal degree, but their main interest is just to try to reinforce their position, try to look good by having as many employees as possible, ergo, do as bad of a job as you can. And also, you don't want to be eliminating your job either. You want to have as many people under your wing as possible. If you had just one guy who could just automate the entire, well, like, let's say like 100 people, you would never want that guy. He's just stupid. He doesn't know how to play the game.
The examples Graeber gave of internal company newsletter writers, multiple receptionists, and administrative
You would not even hire someone like that. You don't want threats.
coordinators for increasingly bloated administration departments are probably things you've experienced yourself if you spent long enough in an office. Companies run on a system where full-time employees must work 40 hours per week because that's what they're getting paid for. So if someone's core responsibilities get completed within 20 hours, they just get given more tasks to do to fill out the week, even if those tasks
That highly discourages doing a good job.
are not essential to business operations. A payroll manager that finishes their timesheets early might use their spare time to create an office culture project, which obviously isn't as important as getting people paid, but it does round out the week and keep them looking busy.
I just find a closet with a roommate.
The problems start if the company opens more locations and processing payroll becomes a 40-hour-week task again. In this case, it's not unthinkable that the company would just hire another payroll manager because the first one is already at capacity with their additional responsibilities as a culture coordinator.
Yes, but also the company is encouraged. Everyone is encouraged to basically do the bare minimum to look okay.
In his book, Graeber argued that even profit-motivated companies often don't have profit-motivated managers. They have managers that want to keep themselves looking just busy enough so they can collect their salary.
Yes. I think when it comes to, well, you might play badly, so to speak, but people are just have their own interests. So the managers just want to keep their job, reinforce their job. The guys possibly just want to work as little as possible. But you're kind of already wasting your life away there. And if you just incentivizing profit, then this could just lead to short-term profits. If you pay the CEO to hit icebergs, they will do that. They'll go through short-term profits, and they don't care. They don't care. Even the investors might not care. Because if we can just make some good profits in the short term, and then they just bail, but that's it. They don't care.
Now, you probably witnessed this firsthand in your own job, but even most senior-level company managers who do have incentives aligned with the company performance can often hire inefficiently on purpose. Despite what they may say, big incumbent businesses love strict regulations and lots of technical boxes to be ticked, because while it's easy for them to hire teams of people to make sure they remain compliant, it's much harder for small startup competitors to waste the limited resources they have to do the same.
The startup guys will just not care. Oh yeah.
Contractors spread their operations out across state and national borders so they can create
So essentially they're just making everything worse to try to build a moat so others cannot compete with them.
jobs for as many budget-setting representatives as possible. There's no real reason that the supply chain for an F-35 fighter jet needs to look like this, but this map represents thousands of jobs across dozens of districts, which in turn means that any plan to rein in spending on this program will be met with fierce opposition from those representatives who just want to create jobs for their constituents. The program
It would be really good if you had a way, any way of actually dealing with the scenario. Because currently, the way you get UBI is that you work for the government, essentially. But you also have to waste your time there.
The program and others like it may have gone way over budget, but it creates jobs, so we all have to get out our knives and forks and eat it. A more controversial example of the same kind of intentional inefficiency recently played out in ports across America. Strikes by the International Longshoremen's Association ran briefly as a result of disputes over pay and automation in ports across the American East Coast. Now, if you ever wanted an example of how powerful unions can be, they secured a 62% pay increase for their workers over the next 6 years after less than 2 days on strike. However,
That's certainly true. If you want to balance the power relations between employer and employees, then you should form a union with everyone, share salaries, and strike constantly. Because people are getting paid peanuts.
However, what was not figured out was the issue of automation in the ports where these longshoremen work. The union was fighting for a deal that would completely ban any automation that could replace workers' jobs.
That's smart. But even if they got that, they probably would have found a different way. The company would have found a different way to automate things. They probably would have used another company and have that automate. And You just build extra docks, I suppose.
A lot of
The point is they would have automated, because you cannot resist this. Because it's basically just free money on the table. You fire all these guys who possibly bought this automation, and that's it. You just pocket the money. And these guys go home and they don't have anything.
A lot of people argue that this was a totally ridiculous request because you can't fight the march of progress. That would be like banning electric bulbs to keep the lamplighters in business.
But this just shows that the worker is incentivized against progress. They see AI, I don't like that. They see automation, I don't like that. Anything that just takes away their job, their incentive is to get paid as much as possible and to keep their job, right? Be as hard as possible to replace. This is not progress or productivity.
The union is continuing to challenge this though because they represent their workers, and this is exactly the point of why creating jobs is seen as a good thing no matter what. You probably agree that having jobs is a good thing when the alternative is needing a job and not having one. You probably also agree that most jobs kinda suck. Yes, there are some hustle bros that rise and grind every day, and there definitely is merit in contributing to the world, but if you were to describe your perfect day, sitting in a cubicle farm probably wouldn't be in the picture. The reason we could have these conflicting beliefs is because of a practical economic reality. For most of you watching, the greatest
Now, just to clarify, some work hard, but the higher you go, the less likely that is. Also, if you own the thing, then you're also more likely to just work hard. If you just work for yourself, then that's gonna be very starkly different than just trying to look busy in an office.
greatest income producing asset you own is your ability to do work in exchange for money, and for many it's their only way to earn an income. As someone whose most valuable
Yeah, that's unfortunate. But also, you need to have a job to live. And that's it. And if you cannot get one, then have you tried not living? And self-employed and business is not really realistic for most people. And society doesn't care.
valuable assets are the second-hand microphone I'm speaking into and the 8-year-old MacBook I'm editing this video on, I'm right there with you. If there wasn't an active market where I could exchange my time for money, I would have no way of providing for myself. According to a report by McKinsey & Company, human capital, as in your ability to work,
Keep in mind that this guy presumably doesn't have a job either. I guess that's what he's hinting at.
represents 2/3 of wealth for the average individual. For most people,
So suppose he didn't have this channel, then what? He easily could have gotten unlucky, and his channel doesn't blow up.
it will be even higher than that, because financial wealth is not evenly distributed and it's skewed by the extreme wealth held by a few.
Yeah, this is an excellent point. This is just a sharing problem. When the robot takes away the job, there's only just more money. There's only more money to be shared, right? Your only concern is that they have like billions and you don't have anything. You go home and like, you try to look for a job that's not automated, but what will be.
Creating jobs is the easiest way for people to exchange that theoretical wealth for actual wealth that they can use to pay their bills, save up for a house, and maybe even enjoy life's little luxuries like food. Now, individuals, politicians, businesses, and management all
People don't really have a free choice in regards to things that they need. You have a free choice about water. Well, you can, I guess, sure. But even electricity, gas, shelter, you don't really have much of a free choice. Like, yeah, you just have to food. You have to pay whatever price these are sold, and you have to do whatever ways to be able to afford it, which is like trying to get a job. And if you can't get that, then you are screwed.
looking out for their own best interest means we get a system where making jobs is okay for everyone, but great for making jobs is okay for everyone, but great.
Is
where
it though?
making jobs
Okay, it's a little unclear who's who here, but let's extrapolate. This guy's interest is not having a job. It is just it's just having enough to live, right? Having the necessities in life. If he had his money without having a job, he would most likely prefer that, right? So it's not about the job. This guy's still the job guy, so who knows? The only one who's really likes jobs is the one who's getting really paid for it, is the employer. Because by creating a job, let's say that I create a job in Bangladesh, right? And they get paid $1 a day, but they make me like, let's say like 300. So that's really good for me. But can you argue that it's good for them?
jobs is okay for everyone, but great for nobody. Automation has the potential to give us more wealth for the same work, or the same wealth for less work, but in our current system, it's more likely just going to be used to cut expenses wherever possible. A survey conducted by Pew Research found that 52% of people were now more concerned about AI than excited, and only 10% of people were more excited
The waking up. That's 2019 only. It's gotta be way higher now.
than concerned. Negative sentiment towards this technology has spiked over just the last 3 years, because aside from the whole Skynet thing, they see AI as a threat to their jobs, not an opportunity that can improve their lives.
Yeah, but we live in a stupid society. People should be celebrating and try to automate everything. Because you can easily have a job where this could be like even like 20 years ago, or close to 20 years ago, that you could find a way to automate it via programming. But if you did that, you would get fired. So that's kind of interesting. So there's no efficiency if you're an employee.
The truth is, it could be both, but in a system where we need our jobs to survive, one is far more scary than the other.
And suppose if you're an owner, then your interest would be just to automate everything. And if those guys, like, tough luck to you.
Other is exciting. Now, this is where we talk about the radical solution to this problem. Ideas like universal basic income often get floated as a compromise, where markets can still exist, but redundant workers don't starve to death. The logical
That's still problematic, though.
redundant
Because you eliminate a guy who's like, let's say that made like 50K, and now they get a UBI that's like, 1/5 of that. So that's not gonna be great. That's not even enough to live. Suppose they got paid like 50K, then sure, it works great, and they're probably gonna focus on possibly degenerate things, but most likely gonna focus on family, which the country might need. But the point I'm arguing, if they get the peanuts of the peanuts, essentially just no money whatsoever, then we have a problem, because who's gonna buy the products? Then you eliminate all the workers, then they have no money. There's probably gonna revolution before. In some countries like Spain, the unemployment is already, very, very, very fat double digits.
redundant workers don't starve to death. The logical challenge to this idea is how we're going to pay for it, and these criticisms are fair, but a great place to start saving some money would be to not waste money just to create jobs for the sake of creating jobs. Adam Smith, the grandfather of economics and free markets, even said as much hundreds of years before the opportunities and/or threats of widespread automation were known. All that toil, all that anxiety, all those mortifications which must be undergone in pursuit of it, and what is of yet more consequence, all that leisure, all that ease, all that careless security, which are forfeited forever by the acquisition. Technology and automation could make a future where we
The only problem here is that the workers don't get the fruit of the labor. That's pretty much it. If the automation, if you lost your job and essentially that just meant that you didn't have to work anymore, you could, but you didn't have to, and you basically just got the same money or more, then people would be celebrating automation as much as possible.
where we don't need to work. It's up to us to build a system around it that makes that a good thing. As always, please tell me why I'm wrong in the comments below. Healthy discussion helps everybody form a well-rounded.
He's right, but basically outside of socialism, what's gonna be? Even in a social democratic perspective, you can at best hope for some pocket money, which is not gonna be that great for most people. Sure, you might say that I'm a little bit early, I guess, at least when it comes to most countries. But that is the way the wind is blowing.
Well-rounded opinion, and it helps the algorithm too. If you want to watch a less controversial video, check out this one where I point out the hypocrisy and money grubbing of one of the world's most popular financial role models.